Those were the last words Sarah Bennett heard from James Cooper before he disappeared from the altar 5 years ago, leaving her in a white gown with tears streaming down her face and 300 shocked guests watching her world collapse. Today, as Sarah unlocks the door to her bakery, flour and fondant, the morning sun filters through the large display windows, casting a warm glow over the pristine countertops and delicate pastries artfully arranged in glass cases. The bell above the door chimes as she enters, the familiar sound grounding her in the present. This bakery, born from her heartbreak, has become her sanctuary. "Good morning, world," she whispers to herself, a ritual she's maintained since opening the shop 3 years ago. A ritual of gratitude, of acknowledging that life continued after James left. Sarah moves through her morning routine with practiced efficiency, firing up the ovens, checking inventory, reviewing the day's special orders. Her assistant, Maya, won't arrive for another hour, giving Sarah these precious moments of solitude before the day truly begins. At 32, Sarah has rebuilt her life piece by piece. The bakery is thriving, she has a close circle of friends who stood by her through her darkest days, and she's finally reached a place where she can think of James without feeling that searing pain in her chest. She's sliding a tray of croissants into the oven when the bell chimes. Too early for customers. Maya must be early today. "We're not open yet," Sarah calls out without turning around, her hands dusted with flour as she reaches for the next tray. "Sarah." The voice freezes her in place. A voice she would recognize anywhere, at any time. A voice that once whispered promises of forever in her ear. Sarah turns slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs, and there he is, James Cooper, standing just inside the doorway, 5 years older but unmistakably the same man who left her standing alone at the altar. And beside him, holding his hand and looking up at her with curious eyes, is a little girl with James's distinctive cleft chin and Sarah's own auburn hair. The rolling pin slips from Sarah's fingers, clattering to the floor as the world tilts beneath her feet. "What are you doing here?" Sarah's voice comes out steadier than she feels, her fingers gripping the edge of the countertop for support. James takes a tentative step forward, then seems to think better of it. The little girl, no more than 4 years old, presses closer to his leg, suddenly shy. "I know I should have called first," James says. His eyes, those hazel eyes that Sarah once knew better than her own, flicker with uncertainty. "But I wasn't sure you'd agree to see me." "You're right," Sarah says, reaching for a clean towel to wipe the flour from her hands. "I wouldn't have." The silence stretches between them, years of unspoken words filling the space. The little girl tugs at James's hand, her patience waning. "Daddy, you said there would be cookies," she whispers, loud enough for Sarah to hear. Something cold and heavy settles in Sarah's stomach. "Daddy." Of course. James had moved on, started a family. But why bring his daughter here? And why does she look so familiar? "This is Lily," James says, his hand resting gently on the child's shoulder. "Lily, this is Ms. Bennett. She's not an old friend of mine." Sarah forces herself to look at the little girl properly. Lily has James's eyes too, but there's something else there, something in the shape of her face, the curve of her smile as she shyly waves at Sarah. "Hi," Lily says. "Hello, Lily," Sarah manages, her professional smile firmly in place now. Years of serving customers through personal crises has taught her how to compartmentalize. "I do have cookies, but we're not open yet." "We can come back," James says quickly. "No," Sarah finds herself saying. "It's fine. I have some ready in the back." To Lily, she adds, "Do you like chocolate chip?" Lily's face lights up. "They're my favorite." Sarah nods, grateful for the excuse to turn away, to retreat to the kitchen where she can breathe. Her hands shake as she reaches for the container of cookies she baked yesterday. "Maya will be here soon," she calls over her shoulder, needing James to know they won't be alone for long. "And then I have a full day of orders to fill." James appears in the doorway of the kitchen, leaving Lily by the display case. "I understand. We need to talk, Sarah. It's important." Sarah turns to face him, a plate of cookies in her hand. 5 years, James. 5 years without a word, without an explanation, and now you show up at my business with your daughter and tell me, we need to talk. She lowers her voice, conscious of the child nearby. What could possibly be so important now? James runs a hand through his hair, still the same nervous gesture, Sarah notes with an unwelcome pang of familiarity. Lily, he says simply. We need to talk about Lily. What about her? Sarah asks, pushing past him to return to the front of the shop. Lily accepts the offered cookie with a gap-toothed smile that catches Sarah off guard. The child's front teeth are just growing in, creating the same slightly crooked pattern that Sarah herself had at that age, a pattern documented in childhood photos her mother still displays proudly. She's beautiful, Sarah says honestly, the compliment slipping out before she can stop it. She looks like you, James says quietly. Sarah's head snaps up, her eyes locking with his. What did you say? The bell above the door chimes again as Maya enters, her usual whirlwind of energy momentarily stalled as she takes in the scene before her. Oh. Sorry, am I interrupting something? Maya's eyes dart between Sarah and James, recognition dawning on her face. Maya had been one of the bridesmaids at the wedding that wasn't. James was just leaving, Sarah says firmly, stepping back behind the counter, creating a physical barrier between herself and her past. Sarah, please, James's voice drops to a near whisper. Lily is your daughter too. The plate Sarah is holding slips from her grasp, shattering on the tile floor as Maya gasps and Lily looks up, startled by the noise, chocolate smeared on her cheek and Sarah's own eyes looking back at her with innocent confusion. Maya swoops in with remarkable composure, gently taking Lily by the hand. Hey there. I bet you'd like to see how we decorate cupcakes, wouldn't you? We have all sorts of sprinkles in the back. Lily looks to James for permission, and he nods, grateful for the intervention. As Maya leads the child away, she shoots Sarah a look that clearly says, I've got this. Take all the time you need. The moment they're alone, Sarah rounds on James. What kind of sick joke is this? Her voice trembles with rage. You abandon me on our wedding day and then return with some wild claim that, it's not a claim, Sarah, James interrupts, his face pale but determined. Lily is your biological child. Our child. Sarah shakes her head, backing away until she hits the counter behind her. That's impossible. We never, I would have known if I'd been pregnant. James pulls out his phone, fingers swiping across the screen before he holds it out to her. Please, just look. On the screen is a medical document, a fertility clinic letterhead at the top. Sarah's eyes scan the text, picking out phrases, successful embryo creation, cryogenic preservation, parental rights. I don't understand, she whispers, though a horrible suspicion is beginning to form. Do you remember when we discussed having children? About 2 years before the wedding. James's voice is gentle now. We decided to freeze embryos as a precaution because of your family history of early-onset fertility issues. Sarah remembers. Her mother had struggled for years to conceive her, and doctors had warned Sarah she might face similar challenges. The fertility preservation had been James's idea, thoughtful, practical James planning for their future together. We created 5 viable embryos, James continues. They were stored at New Life Fertility Center. I know all that, Sarah says impatiently. What I don't know is how you're claiming that this child. I was in a dark place after I left, James interrupts, his eyes dropping to the floor. I'm not proud of what I did, Sarah. But about a year later, I received a notice from the clinic. They needed updated contact information and decisions about the stored embryos. He takes a deep breath. I made a terrible, selfish choice. I listed myself as the sole parent. There was a loophole in the paperwork we'd signed. Sarah feels the blood drain from her face. You stole our embryos? I convinced myself I was saving them, James says, the words coming faster now. That I was preserving the one good thing that came from our relationship. I found a surrogate. Lily was born 4 years ago. Sarah's knees buckle, and she grabs the edge of the counter to keep from collapsing. You had no right, she whispers. No right at all. I know that now, James admits. I've spent years justifying it to myself, but watching Lily grow, seeing more and more of you in her every day, I couldn't keep lying. Does she know? Does Lily know about me? Sarah asks, her eyes darting toward the kitchen where she can hear Maya's animated voice explaining the difference between buttercream and fondant. James shakes his head. I've told her that her mother was someone special who couldn't be with us. That's all she knows. Anger flares hot and bright in Sarah's chest. So I'm just someone special, who abandoned her. That's the story you went with? I didn't know what to tell her, James says defensively. I never expected. You never expected what? To face consequences. To have to explain to your daughter, our daughter, why her parents aren't together. Sarah's voice rises despite her efforts to control it. Why her father is a liar who stole her from her mother before she was even born. James flinches as if she struck him. I deserve that, he says quietly. I deserve your anger. But Lily doesn't. The fight drains out of Sarah as quickly as it came. He's right about that much, at least. Lily is innocent in all of this. Why now? Sarah asks after a moment. Why tell me now, after 4 years? James hesitates, clearly wrestling with his next words. Lily has been asking more questions about her mother. And I'm getting married again. The revelation shouldn't hurt, not after everything else, but somehow it's this final piece of information that sends a crack through Sarah's carefully reconstructed heart. James has moved on. Again. Her name is Rebecca, James continues, oblivious to Sarah's pain. She's wonderful with Lily, but the more serious we became, the more I knew I couldn't start a marriage with this lie between us. Rebecca convinced me that Lily deserves to know her biological mother. Sarah's laugh is hollow. So your fiancé is the reason you developed a conscience? How convenient for you. Before James can respond, Maya reappears with Lily, whose fingers are now stained with food coloring. Look what I made. Lily exclaims, holding up a messily frosted cupcake coated in an excessive amount of rainbow sprinkles. Sarah looks down at this her child, and feels something shift inside her, a tectonic movement of emotion that leaves her breathless. The rest of the day passes in a blur. Sarah goes through the motions, serving customers, filling orders, smiling mechanically, while her mind races. Maya handles most of the customer interaction, throwing concerned glances Sarah's way whenever there's a lull. James and Lily leave after extracting a promise from Sarah to meet them at the park the following day. Just to talk, James had insisted. You deserve to know everything, and Lily deserves to spend time with you if that's what you want. What Sarah wants is to turn back time. To understand why James left her at the altar. To know how he could make such a monumental decision about their embryos without her consent. To have had the chance to know her daughter from birth. By closing time, Sarah is emotionally exhausted. Maya flips the sign to closed and turns to Sarah with determination in her eyes. Spill, she demands. All of it. What did that jerk want after all this time? Sarah sinks into a chair, the weight of the day finally catching up to her. That little girl, she's mine, Maya. Biologically, at least. Maya's eyes widen as Sarah explains about the embryos, the fertility clinic, James's deception. That's illegal, isn't it? Maya asks when Sarah finishes. You could sue him. Take custody. The thought sends a spike of panic through Sarah. I don't know what I want to do, she admits. I just met her. She doesn't even know who I am. And she seems happy with James. But he stole your child, Maya insists. Our child, Sarah corrects automatically, then is surprised by her own response. Despite everything, she cannot deny that James is Lily's father, the only parent Lily has ever known. I need legal advice, Sarah decides. And I need to understand why he left in the first place. He still hasn't explained that part. Maya squeezes her hand. Whatever you decide, I'm here for you. We all are. By we, Sarah knows she means the tight circle of friends who rallied around her after James's desertion. That night, Sarah barely sleeps. She pulls out the box she keeps in the back of her closet, the one containing the few mementos of her relationship with James that she couldn't bring herself to destroy. Photos, ticket stubs, the custom cake topper for their wedding that was never used, that one photo, taken about 6 months before their planned wedding. They're standing in front of the fertility clinic, James's arm around her waist, both of them smiling with hope for their future. Sarah traces James's face with her finger, trying to see some hint, some warning of what was to come. There is none. The next morning dawns bright and clear. Sarah dresses carefully, anxious in a way she hasn't been in years. What do you wear to meet the daughter you never knew you had? James and Lily are already at the park when Sarah arrives, sitting on a bench near the playground. Lily spots her first, waving enthusiastically as if they're old friends. Sarah waves back, her heart constricting painfully. I didn't tell her anything yet, James says quietly as Sarah approaches. I thought we should decide together how to handle this. Sarah nods, grateful for this small consideration, at least. Has she asked about me since yesterday? She said you make the best cookies she's ever tasted, James replies with a small smile. And that your helper Maya, right? Let her use the pink sprinkles that were supposed to be saved for special orders. Despite everything, Sarah finds herself smiling too. Maya has a soft spot for kids. Lily tugs at James's sleeve. Can I go play on the swings, Daddy? Stay where we can see you, James instructs, and they both watch as Lily runs to the playground, her dark auburn hair, Sarah's hair streaming behind her. Once Lily is out of earshot, Sarah turns to James, her expression hardening. Before we discuss anything else, I need to know why you left. The real reason, not some excuse. James's shoulders slump. He looks older suddenly, tired. I was terrified, he admits. Not of marrying you, that was the one thing I was certain of. I was terrified of failing you. Sarah scoffs. So instead you chose to abandon me in the most public, humiliating way possible. That makes no sense. The night before the wedding, I got a call, James continues. My father was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. Sarah's irritation falters. James's father had been like a second parent to her, a warm, brilliant man who had welcomed her into their family with open arms. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I kept it from everyone, James says. But it wasn't just the diagnosis. It was what my mother told me after that. He'd been showing symptoms for over a year but kept it hidden. That the disease runs in our family. That there's a genetic component. Understanding begins to dawn on Sarah. You were worried about passing it on. James nods. In that moment, all I could think about was our plans, our dreams of a family. The embryos we'd created. I panicked. I convinced myself I was protecting you, that you deserved someone who could give you a future without that shadow hanging over it. That wasn't your decision to make, Sarah says, though her anger has dulled somewhat. We could have faced it together. That's what marriage is supposed to be. I know that now, James agrees. But by the time I came to my senses, weeks had passed. You weren't taking my calls, your friends blocked my number, and your parents told me in no uncertain terms to stay away from you forever. So you just gave up, Sarah concludes. And then, a year later, you decided to use our embryos anyway. Despite the very genetic concerns that supposedly drove you away from me. James winces. By then, I'd learned more. Seen specialists. The genetic risk exists, but it's not as straightforward as I initially feared. And I missed you. The embryos were part of you, part of us. I told myself I was preserving what we created together. Without my consent, Sarah reminds him. Yes, James acknowledges. It was wrong. Inexcusable. I've had to live with that knowledge every day while watching Lily grow more and more like you. Across the playground, Lily calls out, "Watch me, Daddy," as she climbs to the top of the slide. "I see you, Lily Bug." James calls back. To Sarah, he says, "She has your determination. And your creativity. She can spend hours with her coloring books, getting every detail just right." Sarah feels a tug of connection to this child she barely knows. "James, I need time to process all this. And I need to speak with a lawyer about my rights." "I understand," James says. "For what it's worth, I'm not trying to keep her from you anymore. That's why I'm here. Lily deserves to know her mother, and you deserve to know your daughter." "And what about your fiancée? Rebecca?" Sarah asks. "How does she feel about all this?" "She's the one who insisted I make this right," James admits. "She said no relationship built on such a significant lie could survive." Sarah watches Lily, who has now moved to the monkey bars, her little face scrunched in concentration. "Smart woman," she says. "Finally, the legal consultations are brutal." Sarah learns that while what James did was unquestionably unethical, the legal landscape surrounding embryo disputes is complex and varies by state. The paperwork they signed years ago had indeed contained a loophole that James exploited. "You have a case," the family law attorney tells her, "but it would be lengthy, expensive, and most importantly, traumatic for the child. Courts generally prioritize the best interests of the child over the disputes of the parents." "And what is in Lily's best interest?" Sarah asks, though she already knows the answer. "Stability," the lawyer replies. Which, at this point, includes the only father she's ever known. "But that doesn't mean you can't be part of her life. We can negotiate visitation, possibly even shared custody if that's what you want." What Sarah wants becomes clearer with each passing day. After the initial shock and anger, what remains is a growing desire to know Lily, not to disrupt her life or take her away from James, but to be present for her going forward. Over the next few weeks, Sarah meets with Lily several more times, always with James present, always in neutral settings like the park or the children's museum. They don't tell Lily the truth yet. That decision still looms on the horizon, but they begin building a foundation. Lily takes to Sarah with surprising ease. "You make the same face as me when you're thinking really hard," she observes during their third meeting, as they work together on a puzzle at the library. Sarah's heart nearly bursts. "Do I?" Lily nods solemnly. "Daddy says I scrunch my nose up like a bunny. You do it too." Sarah catches James watching them, a complicated expression on his face: guilt, affection, and something like hope all mingled together. During their fifth meeting, Lily falls asleep in the car on the way back from the zoo. While she naps in the back seat, Sarah and James have their first real conversation, not about the past or the legal complications, but about Lily herself. "She's allergic to strawberries," James tells her. "Not seriously, but she gets a rash. And she's afraid of thunder, but fascinated by lightning. Oh, and she insists on wearing mismatched socks because her friend Zoe told her it's good luck." Sarah absorbs these details hungrily, filing away each piece of information like a precious artifact. "What's her favorite book?" "Where the Wild Things Are," James replies. "We've read it so many times I know it by heart. My parents read that to me every night until I was 6, Sarah says. James nods. "I remember. That's why I bought it for her." The admission touches Sarah unexpectedly. Despite everything, James had tried to give Lily pieces of her mother's history. As the weeks pass, Sarah begins to form a tentative friendship with Rebecca, James's fiancée. They meet for coffee while James takes Lily to her dance class. Rebecca is nothing like what Sarah expected, not a replacement version of herself, but a thoughtful, straightforward woman with a quiet confidence that Sarah finds herself respecting. I want you to know that I never would have agreed to marry James if I'd known the truth from the beginning, Rebecca tells her. What he did to you was wrong. I've made that very clear to him. Yet you're still marrying him, Sarah observes, not accusingly, just stating a fact, Rebecca nods. Because I believe people can make terrible mistakes and still deserve a chance to be better. I've seen him struggle with this secret, seen how it weighs on him. And I've seen how much he loves Lily. He's a good father, Sarah acknowledges. It's perhaps the highest praise she can offer James now. And you'll be a wonderful mother, Rebecca replies. Lily deserves to know you. I would never stand in the way of that. The conversation marks a turning point for Sarah. That night, she calls James. I'm ready to tell her, she says. If you are. They agree to do it together, at Sarah's apartment where Lily won't associate any potentially difficult emotions with her own home. Sarah spends hours preparing, not just cleaning and buying Lily's favorite snacks, but emotionally steeling herself for every possible reaction. When the day arrives, Sarah is a bundle of nerves. She's baked chocolate chip cookies, Lily's favorite, and set up a small craft table with coloring supplies, in case they need an activity to ease any tension. James arrives with Lily, who immediately runs to give Sarah a hug, a new development that still takes Sarah's breath away each time it happens. I brought Hoppy, Lily announces, holding up a well-loved stuffed rabbit. Daddy said we're having an important talk, and Hoppy helps me listen. Sarah meets James's eyes over Lily's head, and he gives her an encouraging nod. They sit together on Sarah's couch, Lily between them, Hoppy clutched in her small hands. Lily bug, James begins gently. Remember how we've talked about families, and how some families have two mommies or two daddies, or just one parent, or step-parents. Lily nods. Like Zoe. She has a mom and a dad and a stepmom. And 3 houses. That's right, James says. Well, our family is special too. You know how I've told you that your mommy couldn't be with us, but that she was someone very special? Lily nods again, more solemn now. This is clearly a topic they've discussed before. The truth is, James continues, his voice steady despite the emotion Sarah can see in his eyes, your mommy has been wanting to meet you for a very long time. And now she can. Lily's brow furrows in confusion. But where is she? Sarah's heart pounds so hard she's certain they can both hear it. James takes her hand and guides it to cover his and Lily's joined hands. Lily, he says softly. Sarah is your mother. Lily's eyes widen as she looks up at Sarah, then back to James, clearly struggling to process this information. But you said my mommy couldn't be with me. I made a mistake, James admits. A grown-up mistake. Your mommy and we had some problems that kept us apart. But she loves you very much, and she wants to be part of your life, if that's okay with you. Lily looks at Sarah with new eyes, studying her face with an intensity that only a child can manage. Is that why we look the same? And scrunch our noses the same way? Sarah nods, not trusting herself to speak without breaking down. Are you and Daddy getting married? Lily asks, the practical question cutting through the emotional tension. No, sweetheart, Sarah manages. Your daddy is going to marry Rebecca, remember? But I would like to spend time with you. To get to know you better. To be your mom, if you'll let me. Lily considers this for a long moment, her small face serious. Can I still call you Sarah sometimes? I'm not used to having a mom. You can call me whatever makes you comfortable, Sarah assures her, tears finally spilling over. We have lots of time to figure everything out. Lily reaches up to touch one of Sarah's tears with a curious finger. Don't be sad. I'm not sad, Sarah says, smiling through her tears. Sometimes people cry when they're very, very happy. Lily nods, accepting this explanation with the simple wisdom of childhood. Can we have cookies now? Daddy said there would be cookies after our talk. Sarah laughs, the tension breaking. Yes, we can definitely have cookies now. As she gets up to fetch the cookies, Sarah catches James watching her, his expression one of profound relief and tentative hope. In the months that follow, they establish a new normal. Sarah has Lily every other weekend and one evening during the week. They create rituals of their own, Sunday morning baking sessions where Lily learns to make simple cookies and cupcakes, Wednesday evening, art time, where they work on craft projects together. The bakery becomes Lily's second favorite place, after the playground, and Sarah clears a small corner in the back room where Lily can color or play during the times when the bakery schedule overlaps with their visits. Are you sure you're okay with this arrangement? Maya asks one day, watching as Lily decorates cookies with more enthusiasm than skill. You have rights. You could push for more. I'm sure, Sarah says. We're building something good, something that works for all of us. Especially for Lily. James and Rebecca's wedding approaches, and with it comes an unexpected invitation. Rebecca asks Sarah to create the wedding cake. I know it's an unusual request, Rebecca says when they meet to discuss it. If it's too uncomfortable, I completely understand. But Sarah finds she wants to do it not just for Rebecca, whom she's come to genuinely like, but for the new family they're all creating together. I'd be honored, she tells Rebecca. And I think it's important for Lily to see that we can all support each other, even with our complicated history. The day before the wedding, Sarah works late into the night on the cake, a simple but elegant three-tiered design with handcrafted sugar flowers cascading down one side. As she puts the finishing touches on it, she realizes she feels no bitterness, no jealousy. Those emotions have been replaced by something unexpected, gratitude for the second chance to be part of Lily's life, even if it came about in the most unorthodox way. At the wedding, Lily serves as flower girl, proudly walking down the aisle in a dress she helped choose. Sarah sits in the middle of the small gathering, not quite family but no longer a stranger either. When Lily spots her from the front of the ceremony, she waves enthusiastically, and Sarah waves back, her heart full. At the reception, as guests admire the cake, James finds a moment to speak with Sarah alone. Thank you, he says simply. Not just for the cake, but for everything. For being so gracious about all of this. For loving Lily. I should thank you, Sarah replies. You brought her back to me. After taking her away in the first place, James points out, Sarah shrugs. We can't change the past. But we can choose how we move forward. She hesitates, then adds, I forgive you, James. Not for your sake, but for mine. And for Lily's. The relief on his face is palpable. I never thought I'd hear you say that. Neither did I, Sarah admits with a small smile. Life is full of surprises. As if summoned by their conversation, Lily appears, tugging at Sarah's hand. Come dance with me and Rebecca. We're doing the chicken dance. Sarah allows herself to be pulled onto the dance floor, where Rebecca greets her with a warm smile. The three of them, Sarah, Rebecca, and Lily, flap their arms and wiggle in the ridiculous dance, Lily's laughter ringing out above the music. Looking around at the joyful celebration, at her daughter's happiness, at the unlikely extended family they've created, Sarah feels a profound sense of peace settle over her. This is not the life she imagined for herself, but somehow, unexpectedly, it has become a life filled with love. 6 months later, Sarah stands in her bakery, watching as Lily carefully pipes frosting onto cupcakes for the shop's 5th anniversary celebration. At 8 years old, Lily now spends equal time with Sarah and with James and Rebecca, the custody arrangement having evolved naturally as they all grew more comfortable with their new family dynamic. Is this right, Mom? Lily asks, holding up a slightly lopsided cupcake for inspection. Perfect, Sarah assures her, still getting used to being called Mom, a recent development that Lily initiated on her own. The bell above the door chimes, and Sarah looks up to see James and Rebecca entering, accompanied by Maya and Sarah's parents, who have gradually come to accept the unusual circumstances of their granddaughter's life. Surprise, they call out together, and Sarah realizes they've planned this gathering without her knowledge. What's all this? she asks as Maya brings out a cake, one that Sarah didn't bake, with "Congratulations" written across the top. "We have news," Rebecca announces, her hand moving to rest on her stomach. "Lily's going to be a big sister." Lily's squeal of delight is instantaneous. She rushes to Rebecca, pressing her ear against her still flat stomach. "When is the baby coming? Will it be a boy or a girl? Can I help name it?" The adults laugh at her enthusiasm. Sarah moves to hug Rebecca, then James. "Congratulations," she says, genuinely happy for them. "Lily will be an amazing big sister." As the impromptu celebration continues, with Lily detailing all the ways she plans to help with the new baby, Sarah's mother pulls her aside. "Are you really okay with all of this?" she asks, concern evident in her voice. "It's a lot to process." Sarah watches as Lily demonstrates to Rebecca how to properly frost a cupcake, James looking on with pride. "I'm more than okay," she tells her mother. "5 years ago, when James left me at the altar, I thought my life was over. But look what I've gained: a beautiful daughter, a thriving business, a different kind of family than I expected, but a family nonetheless." Her mother squeezes her hand. "You've handled this with such grace, Sarah. I'm so proud of you." Later, as the gathering winds down and Lily helps clean up, insisting on being responsible for wiping down the tables, James approaches Sarah again. "Rebecca and I have been talking," he says. "We'd like you to be the baby's godmother. To be officially part of this extended family we're building. If you want to, that is." Sarah is touched by the gesture. "I'd be honored," she says. Then, with a teasing smile, "as long as this one is biologically yours and Rebecca's." James laughs, acknowledging the dark humor. "Absolutely. Guaranteed." As the last of the guests leave, Lily runs up to Sarah, her face serious. "Can I ask you something, Mom?" "Anything," Sarah replies. "Are you sad that you and Daddy aren't married? That he's having a baby with Rebecca instead of with you?"